All right, I'm going to assume people are going to trickle in a little bit, but we'll go ahead and get started. If you haven't been here before, welcome to the Red Bank Public Library. This is one of many programs we do, but we do a bunch of other stuff. I put some of it up there. We've got a mindful eating program that Judy's hosting coming up is it next week? That's a really cool one. It's going to be a series too, right?
Yes, it'll be a nutrition, about all kinds of different topics.
Right. So yeah, that's going to be one that we have. We also have Let's Talk About Race is a really popular one. That's the last Wednesday of every month. And then if you're into yoga, we do free yoga twice a week. We do conversational Spanish, which is also on Tuesday night. So don't come to this night, but every other Tuesday of the month we have conversational Spanish. No, it's okay. We're not in serious competition, but yeah, Jorge does that upstairs every Tuesday. It's been really popular. He's apparently very good. We do an anime club, all sorts of other things. We're constantly expanding our programs, so if you ever have any ideas for anything, this is your library, so let us know. But this program in particular is Sustainable Red Bank. It's been going for 5 or 6 months now. We've done a bunch of different stuff. We did a recycling one. We were talking before most people showed up. Recycle Coach, which is an app that you can download that you can put in your zip code, and it lets you know what you can and can't recycle in town, which is something that a lot of people get confused on, and it changes from place to place, but we learned that during our recycling class. We also did a composting one. We did energy efficiency. We've got kind of a lot more really cool stuff coming up. Next month is actually not a class. We are doing a local food cook-off. It's the Saturday before Thanksgiving. We did it once before with like pumpkins. Everyone had to use a pumpkin. This time it's just got to feature one item of locally grown food. And locally we mean New Jersey. And so yeah, if you want to enter that, we'll have a registration up online. But that is the Saturday before Thanksgiving, which I'm blanking on the date, but we've got a flyer right up here with that on it. And then the next discussion is actually going to be in December. I normally am just the moderator for it, but I'm actually doing that one. That one's on sustainable travel. So we've got like a kind of a lot coming down the pipe. But when we first started doing the survey for Sustainable Red Bank, the number one thing that everyone who filled out the survey asked for was something on food. And the reason for that is pretty obvious. When I first graduated college, I worked at a produce stand. And we sold like local and organic food. And it was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we had someone who came in and berated us for not selling local bananas. So we had to explain to her that that was not something you could find in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she would have to move several hundred miles into a different country if she wanted to get local bananas. But that kind of like gets to the heart of a lot of it. There's a lot of misconceptions about food, especially when it comes to stuff like sustainability. You've got, what's more important, is it local or is it organic? Do you want to do one of the diets that are like, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, flexitarian, all those other ones? There are people kind of have ethical considerations in what they're doing, sustainability considerations. A big one is I never buy organic because I can't really afford organic every time I go to the grocery. And so, like money obviously comes into it for a lot of people, and so given all of like the conflicting things that are going on, we decided that rather than having one person come in and say why their way was the right way, we would do a panel. And so we got people from 3 different perspectives who are going to talk. They're going to do a brief little presentation on kind of what they do, and then we're going to open it up, and this is mostly going to be Q&A. Just so you know, it is being filmed. If you have a problem with it, with being on film, then that's fine. Just stay back there. You can still ask your questions. Your face won't show. I'm not going to like swivel it around to show you or anything like that. But yeah, we are going to start with RJ and Rob Poggioli. They are 2 brothers who share a mission for growing and preparing the most nutritionally dense food as determinably possible. They're first generation farmers who have been practicing regenerative agriculture since 2012. The past spring kickstarted their inaugural growing season on their new family farmstead in Howell, which is here in Monmouth. And they both continually emphasize the need to support all demographics with healthy produce while integrating natural therapeutic methods to support human health. They're also the heads of the Bionutrient Food Association of Jersey Shore chapter. Yeah. So I'll hand it off to you guys. You guys go ahead, and then we'll cycle through.
Sit up here.
Yeah, wherever you like.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, so basically, I'm going to start off by talking about local and organic food from a farmer's perspective. And then Rob's going to, at the second half, he's going to jump into the importance of quality and really defining quality, what quality food is. So we know organic, we know we have non-GMO food, but is this nutritional? Is the food nutritional? So back when I was like 18 years old, I think I got introduced to the concept of voting with your dollar. And that was really inspiring to me because I didn't have a lot of money and I wanted to like really make an impact in my community. So realizing this, that okay, so wherever I put my money, that's where the market is going to go. So if no one puts their money to McDonald's, they're not going to be around me. So I thought that was a really awesome concept, and it started to get me think. Well, if we vote for our politicians, we want to be educated. We want to know what their policies are. We want to know who these people are. So I should kind of take that concept and apply it to where I buy my food, clothing, etc. So in order to understand the agricultural system and kind of gain knowledge on that, I had to look at, well, what's actually the current system right now, and it's really pretty unsustainable. So the unsustainable practices of the use of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, super toxic chemicals such as glyphosate. I know they're poisoning wildlife, they're polluting land and rivers and wetlands and destroying like pretty much the soil, which is the basis for our crops, for life on Earth. GMO crops have led to a huge increase in agricultural chemicals and also cross-contamination of non-GMO crops. And then another aspect of unsustainable farming is the amount of food that we waste. I think it was, I pulled up a quick fact, in 2018 we waste about 1/3 of the world's food, accounting for roughly 1.3 billion tons of food and $990 billion. And not only are we wasting that food that could be going to people that are hungry and in need, we're also wasting all the resources to grow that food. So it's like a double waste. And then I'm sure most of you people know about the atrocities in like the meat and the dairy industry. We don't want to go too much down that, but like growing grains such as corn and soy to feed animals that just eat grass, or just the unnecessary abuse and treatment of animals in this industry. It's not necessarily bad or wrong to eat fish or poultry or meat, but to do it in a way that's sustainable for our environment and healthy for us, we had to definitely find another way. And then as farmers, a lot of the farmers in this world are severely underpaid, and they work in like really horrible conditions. So those are just a brief overview I want to go through of what the unsustainable practice of farming, so I can understand what I don't want to put my money into, the companies or the farmers that are producing those types of crops through those practices. So on the inverse is the sustainable and the regenerative agriculture, which is what Rob and I try to practice on our farm. These principles increase biodiversity, they enrich soils, they improve watersheds, and enhance ecosystem services. So when I think of regenerative agriculture, I just got a brief definition, is to capture carbon in the soil in the form of organic matter and focus on feeding soil biology, which allows plants to uptake the maximum amount of minerals and produce the most nutrient-dense food. It conserves energy and water, emphasizes local production, and decreases inputs and utilizes resources more efficiently. To provide access to nutrient-rich food to all demographics is definitely a goal of ours. And in order to do this, that's necessary in order to sustain the health of the community and ourselves, our families. And we also must be able to support the farmers that are doing it right, because the people that are doing it properly need to be paid a fair wage, and as are the industry, like the restaurants and the grocery stores that are the cooperatives that are serving these foods to our community. So now that I've kind of been informed and empowered, with the knowledge of sustainability versus unsustainable, we can make our like vote, you know. So one of the things that I'm just going to talk about briefly is buying locally. I think that's a pretty important vote to make when you can. It keeps more money circulating into the in our community. Even though large supermarkets do pay local wages and they do donate to charities, a lot of the hugest part of their profits from their company, the shareholder returns, and the highest wages of the company usually don't make it circulate back into our community. Usually they're like elsewhere outside of our community. You know, we also don't usually see them sourcing out like regional or local marketing companies or consulting companies or accountants, professionals. But it's not really only about the money when it comes to local. And I like this point is, on a cultural note, when we grow or we make or do things in this region that is unique to this region, that is a reason why people visit here. It's also people, like whether it be local food or beer or art or new business, a great community is that community that has preserved its identity. And local business owners understand that. The need to preserve the identity of our region, because they understand that's why locals stay there and understand why newcomers come. I don't think I've ever heard anybody come and tell me that, oh, I just want to move to that area because, you know, they have like the nicest, most beautiful Walmart. You know, it's usually an environmental thing. It's like the scenery. I love the people there. I love the community, and so that's why people, you know, live there. And so we want to have our hard-earned money circulating in our community as often as we can. And we can't be super rigid about it, but we want to definitely keep that in mind. And then I came up with 7 ways that ways that we can support sustainable agriculture. And I think the first most sustainable action you can make is to grow your own food in some way, shape, or form. Either plant a garden or forage. There's plenty of local forage that you can go out and you can learn and go on forage walks. They have a lot of forage walks, herbalists do forage walks. You can look them through online. And there's nothing really more sustainable or empowering than being able to grow your own food and saving your own seed and redoing it again each year. This is the best way to ensure that you'll have access to the freshest and healthiest food. So that's number 1. To combat the waste, we want to compost as often as you can. It's a simple, we don't really have a huge composting system at our farm set up currently, but I bought a 5-gallon bucket with a secure lid, store it under my sink. Every time I have vegetable scraps or eggshells or anything, I just toss it in there, and then I either dump it in our wood pile or bring it to our compost pile where we work up down the road in Middletown. Another vote I want to make is to buy organic and non-GMO. So organic eliminates the fact that you're going to have any like harmful toxic chemicals like glyphosate in your diet and other fungicides. And you know, it's I kind of shop around. I usually get some of my produce from the Whole Foods down in Red Bank, and you know, it is more expensive, definitely more expensive to buy organic, but you have to like weigh out those concerns. And eating seasonal definitely helps with the costs. You know, so try to pick what's in season. Another way to support sustainable agriculture is seek out local farmers through the internet and your farmers markets. And as farmers, ask some questions. We want people to ask us questions about, you know, how we feed our soil and how we grow that crop, how we make those crops so healthy. We're in the industry, or we're a business too, and we're proud. We want to be proud of what we're doing, and we want to show people that like this product is the best. This is the best that we have to offer, and this is how we got that product. So ask farmers questions like, do you spray harmful chemicals on your farm? Do you use regenerative farming practices? Do you use genetically modified seeds, or do you save your seeds? And also, like, most importantly, ask them how they care for their soil, their water management practices, these types of things. And we'll be like so excited to answer those types of questions. We'll probably geek out on you guys and tell you way more than you're interested in. So that, shopping at local farmers markets, supporting farmers, and CSA models are also really good. Community support agriculture. is basically a program which you pay up front in the beginning of the year for a week's worth of share throughout the season, usually get what's in season, and based on how the crops do or how the farm is run, you get a share of that produce. And it originally started out you're supposed to be volunteering and helping out, so you get that aspect of it as well, but it's more turned into like box shares where you just pick up your box. And then food cooperatives are awesome. I think this is one of the future avenues that aren't so much around here. I've seen a couple in the Midwest, but it's really like a food cooperative is basically consumer cooperatives where the decisions regarding the production and distribution of its foods are chosen by its members. So it could be at a central location store where each community member owns a share of the store, and they do votes into how they want to buy bulk and the discounts they want to offer their members. Or Rob and I joined a food cooperative in Pennsylvania called Pleasant Pastures, and that's just because we can get like raw milk there. Like you can't buy raw milk, so we import it, and they deliver it at a spot into Eatontown, and we try to pick it up every other week. And then I think the last point is to seek out quality food and really like determine for yourself what quality is. Use your senses, use your taste buds. Those are your sensors of what it's gonna tell you. Like if you taste the carrot and it's sweet and it's crunchy, you know it's good for you. If you taste it and it's bitter and it's like kind of flim, you kind of want to spit it out. Like children do that. It's like their first reaction. And they don't know all this information. They just say, "Oh, is that good for me? Is that going to nourish me?" So use your taste buds. And I'm going to now send it off to Rob just really shortly for him to talk about what we do with the Bionutrient Food Association and the Real Food Campaign, which is basically
so we are chapter leaders of the Bionutrient Food Association, as said earlier. To go off of RJ's final statements about taste and nutrition in the food, the quality. Using our senses as like first initial gauge of is this a good carrot? Is this a good tomato? That kickstarted a little bit of our own research and led us to some individuals who are doing some pretty good backdoor intro, whatever you want to call it, into the science of nutrient density within produce. So the organization we're working with they're crowdsourcing, and they're using farmers on the front level. They're sending out meter kits so we could send data back, and they could database and pool all the information of what nutrients are, which produce, how the soil was handled, when it was harvested, time of year, etc., to find out the actual base level quality of the nutrients within our produce. So the basic research is already showing regenerative agriculture the principles found in regenerative agriculture to yield, on low estimates 4 to high estimates 16, times nutrients in food that was handled in, basic manner, such as, large-scale organic farms who just do the basic amendments. They're all certified organic, but there's no quality input. There's no focus on flavor profiles, phytonutrients, microbiology in the soil. All the great practices that we're trying to implement that aren't present, are being proven now to show low nutrients in the food that we're eating. So going back to what RJ was saying about, purchasing food that's organic or purchasing food that's non-GMO, we're also finding that the nutrient quality fluctuates within that realm. So a piece of produce, that is certified organic from California that gets shipped over, it's obviously harvested a little earlier. Some of the practices, again, questionable. It's clean, but it's going to be basically water weight. And we like to use the analogy like you're eating cardboard at that point, just soaked cardboard. And as opposed to going down to your grandmother's garden or a local farm and picking a carrot right out of the ground at its peak ripeness, you're going to have nutrients that are presently available that aren't going to diminish the moment you eat them, from the day you harvest it, slowly as they start to digress. So what we're realizing on our farm and in the project that we're working on up here in Middletown is people definitely could taste the flavor, they recognize it, and they're curious to know why is this why does this tomato taste different than the tomato I buy over at the store? You know, yeah, it's not certified because we're not certified practicing farm, but what's happening? And we've seen people eat tomatoes and say, I haven't had a tomato like that in 50 years. You know, they're obviously a little bit older, but they you know, that light comes to their face and they say, what was that you're doing to that? And then we start to explain our practices, and you know, on a basic level, what we're finding out is just the biological input, you know, the proper farm management, the harvesting techniques, the storage techniques, all will play a role into the flavor profile and the nutritional quality of the produce. So I think a good way to take that onto a sustainably local level is, you know, we have to build it here. It's not going to just come here. No one's going to bring it here. No one really cares about it here except the people who live here. So it's a responsibility, but not more than a responsibility, almost a necessity to create a food movement or a small bank of, you know, growers or organizers, whatever we call it, that work with kitchens, you know, shops, local vendors, co-ops, farmers markets, whatever, and to continue cultivating that, because the moment that dries up, you know, the outlet and the economic viability for a small farm to get started or small growers to get started all of a sudden is just not there. It's hard to enter into you know, into the field here, no pun intended, but enter into the market without the awareness of the consumer being present. And that's a huge role on, you know, us here as individuals coming to talk about these things, to educate and to lead the way for other individuals. Say, hey, you know, I could bring sweet potatoes that were grown locally to Thanksgiving and let people taste it, and then, hey, you know, I grew that, it was only grown a couple miles away. That in itself has a huge impact on the realization that this food came from somewhere close by. It didn't come from a farm that you don't know of, you know, like a place that you've never seen. It was actually here. There's family present. You know, there's people and individuals involved, and I think shying away from that disconnection and you know, keeping the connection here as a community is a huge part of it. I remember when I took an a test when I was younger, say, what was your career going to be? And one of the ones was a farmer. And I said, farm, I've never been on a farm. I've picked up produce at the grocery store. What does a farm look like? And it was kind of a scary thing when I took that test, because I said, you know, whoa, where does milk come from? And, you know, growing up in a generation where that disconnection was obviously very present, it took only, you know, a couple of seasons or a couple of years being engaged in it to really let that presence reemerge of, wow, there's something deeply rooted in all of us to have food, you know, fresh, picked wherever, grown locally, and not transported hundreds of miles, let alone ecological footprint, you know, just as like a flavor profile, you know, somewhere there in my taste buds, somewhere there in my sensors. So when we started working with these organizations, we were pretty inquisitive, like, hey, why are you guys doing this? Where is it leading? And I have yet to have been upset or disappointed in the answers that we've been getting. It's just all been positive. It's a very open source community of farmers that we work with. We're going to nutritional conferences, and they speak about, you know, like the fact that maybe we don't need to add so much organic fertilizers as opposed to just adding some biological amendments of, you know, microbes or fungal networking introductions. And they're kind of like biting their own, you know, they're kind of just saying, wait, what we were saying 2 years ago might not be as applicable all of a sudden. So their testing and their open honesty has been leading and paving the way for what seems to be a pretty good future of regenerative agriculture. There's a lot of concerns of people, you know, with carbon, and the regenerative practices are showing that the carbon sequestration is going to be one of the most important things moving forward because of the acreage and size of farms. So large-scale monocropping farms are finding that the input that they're doing for cover cropping, for composting, whatever it may be, is actually becoming economically viable throughout time. So Rodale's doing some pretty good studies. They've led the way as a larger organization, but the small scale, the small scale researchers are also finding on properties such as our small farm that those regenerative practices just go quickly. You know, a piece of land that was over-farmed or overgrazed or over-fertilized, 2 years, 3 years, they're showing you could pretty much get a good turnover. And within 10 years, if you took pictures of a farm 10 years, regenerative agricultural practices, it's like night and day. You know, there's dry, barren, dusty land turned to like rich, almost forest-like properties, on in the soil. So, using our senses, you could pick up a pile of dirt and taste, you could smell it, and it has that earthy scent to it. But, you go out into, on a crop field, it's just not present. And from firsthand experience, we found that there's just a few simple things that you need to do for your farm. Just basic biology, basic elementary school biology, to just keep it going. We could get into the nitty-gritty details and some of the stuff that just goes above our heads. We can't even comprehend sometimes, but on a basic level, we feel strongly about the regenerative agricultural movement related to local health and nutrition. So as it pans out, higher nutritional value in our produce is just going to benefit you as a consumer, eater, culinary chef, whatever. Everybody eats, everyone has food, we eat it every day. I don't think I know anybody who doesn't eat, so it's somewhere, it's definitely a place to start. Everyone has to have that meal, in the day. And if we could gear towards the practices that RJ was saying of eating locally, shop locally, building compost, I think we could, continue to cultivate a good community around that. So, that's what we leave off.
Thank you. Yeah, so that kind of leads in really well. I know that for my family, like, we weren't really paying attention to our food until we had our daughter, and that was when we started panicking about, everything. And the first thing we did is we did a CSA, and the world of difference between, like, August, all we got was tomatoes, and the world of difference between those and like what we were getting at the grocery store was like insane. So the fact that, like, more sustainable stuff actually turns out tasting better too is great. Which leads us into our next person, who, if you live in town, you have probably eaten his food. Joe Durso from KITCH Organic he's the owner and restaurateur of KITCH Organic. His love for food and working with the best ingredients stems from his belief that food is the most common bond in life, no matter who you are. Food is something that fuels us all, and his goal and vision for KITCH Organic is to show local communities that it is possible for everyone to have healthy and accessible food while also living a happy and fulfilling life without changing everything around them. So we wanted to get a restaurateur's perspective on this, and Joe generously agreed to come. So
Q&A. Thanks for everybody coming out. And I'll tell you a little bit about the restaurant and why I believe it's important that places like mine actually exist, and that I want to actually open a bunch more. Put some notes together. But just a simple explanation of what we do. We're an organic, 100% gluten-free, dairy-free, and wheat-free restaurant. And we do thrive on what these guys do. It's very important what they do. Bringing locally sourced stuff. That actually was super interesting. And the one thing that touched on the most for me was you guys aren't certified. It says KITCH Organic in our name. Everything in our restaurant is not 100% organic. And that's something people talk to me about all the time. They're like, is it false advertising? Is it not? I'd say about 95% of the stuff we serve is 100% organic or certified. But it's guys like these who, you have to know your farmer. If you can shake hands with your farmer, I believe that the product is going to be there, like I said, with the tomato and stuff like that. I remember my grandfather, even in Staten Island, I know their soil isn't the best in Staten Island, but when I was growing up, I used to go in his garden and grab tomatoes off of the vine, and it tastes nothing like a lot of them do now, and it's truly incredible. But in order for us to survive in this market and be at a price point that's competitive, is working with local farmers and local farmers markets and really doing our research and making sure that it's comparable and competitive with other restaurants. The biggest complaint people have about our restaurant is expensive. And we understand that, but we feel that if we can survive long enough in this environment, that it's gonna all come back down. And our price point and our margins are exactly the same. I'm probably the most transparent restaurant you'll ever find. If you wanna see my books, if you wanna see my invoices, I'll show you every one of them. I have people complain about the price, and I'm like, all right, here you go, here's the invoice. And I'm still making a 30% margin just like any other restaurant, any other pizza place down the street. We're not here to rip you off. We're here to give you good food and make sure that, like I say, food is fuel for life. And whatever you put in, you put out. And from a business standpoint, people always ask me how I like to implement this into my business or from an education standpoint. And there's always, for me, it's always like a 3-stage kind of thing, where for my employees, I have to really educate them. Because we were talking about before you guys got here that we used to compost the place. It got a little smelly, so we stopped doing that. But my guys don't waste anything. We try to use everything 3 times over, wherever we're buying it from, whether we pickle it, whether we putting it in something that we're gonna use down the line, or for whatever it is. But educating your team where they actually care about it is the most important thing I do on a daily basis, so I don't have to be over their shoulder, kind of just be like, oh, you're gonna use that? Are you gonna, my guys cut the bottles off, and just get in there and scoop every little bit out, because waste is the biggest thing in the restaurant industry. That is killing, like, what was the number? I don't give you a number before, that was outrageous.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, there's 2 numbers there.
Yeah.
Less than 5%, if we wasted 5% less food, we could feed 4 million more Americans.
Yeah, so that right there says everything. And so if your team that you're working with understands that, I feel like it portrays to the customers and what you're putting out. The second set of people that you want to talk to is investors. Investors hate the fact that they hate what I do, pretty much. As a restaurant, I am not your typical restaurant. I came from the finance world. I saw a void for this in our area, and I jumped right in. Threw everything I had into it. I had a great job at a hedge fund. I just hated it. I hated what people were doing. I really wanted to help in the most one-to-one way possible. And I feel like food being the most common bond, it was the fastest way to help people and get a quick reaction if they liked it or if they didn't like it. And I think for investors, sometimes they don't really want they don't want me to be crunchy, they don't want me to care about the earth, they didn't care I have rain barrels, they don't care I have compost, they didn't care anything of that matter. For them, it's dollars and cents. It saves me money shopping locally. It absolutely saves me money, whether it be organic or not. I can tell any investor the amount of money we save just by, I know you're doing on a couple weeks on like plastics and stuff like that, but we ask for straws. We took that whole thing away when everyone was going straw crazy. And we sell metal straws at the restaurant. We give them out pretty much to anyone who asks. It saves you a lot of money in the long run if you go through your numbers and go through your book. So to talk to an investor, if you want to open a restaurant like this, I feel like that's the biggest thing. The hot button is you're going to save them money as well. Because they'd say, I think it's every dollar that you put towards being eco-friendly, you're actually saving $14 in the process. And customers, you just have to tell them that they're getting the freshest, like, if it doesn't taste good, they're not gonna come back. It's gonna be the freshest product around, and that's what we kind of hope for. And when it comes to cost and when it comes to the restaurant, cooking what's in season is definitely the best way of doing it. And the cool thing is I'm seeing a lot more uses of things that you really can't have year round. When we started, the company that we were working with is in California. They have a much easier time growing stuff year round than we do. And when it comes down to it, there are a lot of, we're talking about hydroponic farms and stuff like that they're right around the corner with really gonna be in everyone's supermarket. I know Sickles is having one and a couple other places are, but it's gonna be a lot more accessible than it ever was, and I feel like that's when the price point is gonna come down for us. Growing it yourself is obviously, we have a garden at the restaurant that is in the summer about 40% of our produce. We try to use everything we possibly can do, and that saves us a ton of money. I'm not gonna lie, a ton. Like this year wasn't even that good, and it was still great for that. And we always talk about just thinking beyond food. Once the food's in you, it's all about community. If the community believes in what you're doing, you're gonna go forward. Every person I spoke to when I was opening this restaurant told me I was crazy, told me not to do it. Restaurants are the hardest business in the world, and no one's gonna take to this, no one's gonna spend money. We're gonna be franchising out, I was just talking about, probably in the next year or so, opening as many as we can, because the generation coming up is really starting to care about themselves first, and then they're going to start to care about everybody else, and they're willing to spend that money. And it's great because it's great for me, obviously, but it's great for the community. I feel like where we are in the west side of town, it wasn't a desired location, and I feel like a lot of people are kind of coming towards it and seeing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to sustaining your health and eating this way every day. One other thing that I'll talk about before I pass it on is also with the community, just doing your homework. This is great that you guys came out to this. I learned stuff from them right there, and I consider myself pretty knowledgeable about this topic. And I try to talk to every other restaurant that I can. There's a lot of quick changes that people are making that really don't take that much off the bottom line. But you're going to see a lot more places open up, and the feedback from the customer is the most important thing, obviously, in my world. And the feedback we've been getting from, and the knowledge that they have is the most important. And I feel like educating them, educating their kids, is easily the coolest thing we do. Because we work with the schools in the area, we work with Red Bank Primary. I have them in twice a year to the garden and teach them how to do it. And to see the education they have, unbelievable. It blows me away how much, like you were saying, if they pick it, they eat it. And to see these kids who are 7 years old eating kale and enjoying it, it blows my mind, because I never would have thought that when I was a kid, you know? But yeah, no, I'll finish up and let you guys get to Q&A, so.
So for our third expert, I didn't have to go very far. Judy works up at the circulation desks most nights and is down here tonight helping us out. She's got a background, she's a registered dietitian nutritionist. She has a program. If you weren't here at the beginning, there is a program coming up next week, and it's going to be a series. The first one's on mindful eating, which is the 23rd,
Yes.
which is the Saturday?
No, it's a Wednesday.
Wednesday. Wow. All right, yeah, Wednesday. So next Wednesday is going to be the first of that one, but she's going to be doing a lot more of these. She is a public and community health dietitian. She's been working with underserved and at-risk populations for over 20 years. She's a longtime member of the Health and Environmental Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group. She is a longtime proponent of a food system that is sustainable, healthy, and equitable, and is also affordable and accessible to all. And she works here. So she's going to talk a little bit from the health side of things, kind of what's important to know. So Judy, go ahead.
Well, health, and also I'm probably going to reinforce a lot of what they said. I have something here, you're talking about community, that's a diagram for community food system. I want to start out by just saying what's important to me is a sustainable food system. We do not in this country have a sustainable food system, and a lot of that has to do with the farm bill and the commodities, and we could talk all day about that, but that's the thing that's most important to me. And I want to read two definitions quickly. A sustainable food system is a food system in which everyone has financial and physical access to culturally appropriate, affordable, nutritious food that was grown and transported without degrading the natural environment, and in which the general population understands nutrition. So I think that sort of follows everything you guys have said. And the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN says pretty much the same thing, a food system that delivers food security, and that's a very big thing for me because I've worked with at-risk populations for so long, in such a way that the economic, social, and environmental basis to generate food security and nutrition for the future generations are not compromised. And this means that it's profitable through economics and sustainability. It has a broad-based benefits for society, and it has a positive or neutral impact on the natural environment. So I think there's a theme here. You know, we want food that everybody can afford, that is produced in a way that is sustainable, that supports the environment. And this community food system, and I did some handouts, it basically talks about all the different levels. It starts with the farmers. You learn together about what they do, which is what you guys were saying. Boost sustainability to protect resources for the future. Support local food economies, which also goes along with what you guys are talking about. And improving the access of affordable, nutritious, and local foods. And they just encourage you to just get engaged, so I will make that available. So just jumping on to sort of reiterating, you know, farmers, not even small farmers, but even mid-sized farmers are beginning to realize, as I think you guys said, that this kind of farming, the biodiversity, the attention to till or no-till, which tilling your crops creates erosion, the farmers are beginning to understand that the way they, not the big industrial farms, but the smaller farms and the mid-sized farms, I think are beginning to realize that what they're doing isn't working. And there's actually, there's an Indian legend called the Legend of the Three Sisters. And it basically, one sister is corn, one sister is beans or legumes, and one sister is a pumpkin or squash. And the corn is a stalk that holds the beans and allows it to grow, and the beans also attach nitrogen to the earth and what's the word? Regenerates the earth, which is part of what you're talking about. And the squash has leaves that cover the base of these plants to keep weeds from growing, to keep the soil moist, and to keep erosion from happening. And this is how the Indians, the Native Americans, used to grow. This is what they used to grow these three plants together. So, you know, what we're talking about here has been around for hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of years, is the symbiotic use of agriculture to support a healthy, biodiverse soil. So, one of the other things I think that you mentioned, or I don't know if you did mention it, but one of the things that always blows my mind about, and I'm going into a little bit of from my perspective of the agriculture and animal husbandry, is feeding corn to animals, to ruminant animals that are built to eat grass. And this is taking a plant and making it into food, an animal that's going to create less CO2 in their what they let out into the air, and it's healthier for them, and you eliminate these CAFOs, the big finishing pens that create so much pollution and problems. And it's just, I think that local farmers tend to do that more, local dairy farms and places like that. But it's something to consider about the system that we currently work in, that currently exists, doesn't even take something as basic as the animal's health into consideration. So basically, what I was suggesting is what these gentlemen have basically said. You want to support small farms and local farms, and you want to use farmers markets. You also want to encourage restaurants and supermarkets to source produce locally. I know that Foodtown definitely does New Jersey Fresh, and they will get their produce from New Jersey. I haven't seen that at ShopRite so much, or some of the others, but from my perspective, eating seasonally, eating what's available in your area, sourcing it locally, or even in the US. Now, organic, of course, is best, but because I come from a background of working with limited resource audiences, that's not always possible. They can't always afford that. But if they can't do organic, we encourage them to at least go to the farmers markets, and a lot of the farmers markets now have, they take SNAP benefits. And also, if you source things locally, that's less resources you're using for transportation, and the resources that are being used to produce this food locally is a lot more conservative than the large industrial farms, which waste a lot. Also, from a nutrition perspective, to think about whole food and focus on foods and not nutrients. And that goes in keeping with the idea that things don't taste like they used to because they just don't have the nutrients or the healthy soil to grow in. But we've gotten away from thinking about food, and we think about nutrients. And that's one of the reasons why you'll see so many overly processed foods they're cheap because of the commodity system that grows all of this soy and wheat to feed animals, but also the byproduct, there's a lot of byproduct out there to manufacture foods, high fructose corn syrup and other things like that. But yet they add back in, why should they be adding back in all the nutrients that were originally in food when it's produced, when the whole food is produced? So I think the focus should be more on whole food, mostly plant-based foods, less heavily processed foods. And community gardens, we talked about community gardens, growing your own. Community gardens are very important also, and while community gardens and growing your own food is not going to completely counteract you know, the shortage of a good, healthy, well-produced food, it's certainly going to go a long way to doing that. But then we're going to get to the area that I feel most passionate about and it only got touched on, and that is food waste. I give you an example. Romaine lettuce that does not fit into the plastic packages gets plowed under. Now that's not necessarily terrible because it's, you know, fertilizer, it becomes mulch, but whatever, but you're wasting all of this food that could be eaten because it doesn't fit perfectly into the bag that it's packed into for most mass producers. There was the ex-president of Trader Joe's who went around. He's in Gloucester, Boston. Boston. He basically the community there. His whole program was to go around and take these kinds of this kind of produce and to take things off of the shelves, because anything that is within 2 days of an expiration date has to come off the shelf. And he would repackage them and put them in. He had a store that you had to be a member at for a whole lot of reasons, but it was in a poor community, and he would sell them for $1. And then when they actually reached the expiration date, he'd take them into the back, and he had a commissary, and he would cook them up into some kind of meals ready to eat, and he would sell those for $1. So it's a way of recycling food and avoiding food waste. And this was the other handout that I have, and the average American throws away 209 to 254 pounds of edible food each year. That's, you know, just stunning to me. And one of the reasons why it's so great that you use everything you can. And 30 to 50% of the food that makes it to the supermarket shelves is thrown away in the homes of the people that purchase it. And I'm given the statistic that 5% less food waste would feed 400 million Americans. And, you know, there's a big concern right now about how much money is being spent on SNAP. Well, you know, if you had the farm to market, if you didn't waste this food and you could redistribute it, you could feed 400 million Americans. 15% less waste could feed 25 million more Americans. 40% of the food in the U.S. that's produced in the food in the U.S. every year is never even eaten, just gets thrown out. And in 2010, the discarded food represented the single largest component of municipal solid waste reaching landfills and incinerators. And this to me is just obscene. And it's just not necessary. So my biggest take home for how to have a more sustainable food system, how to eat more sustainably, is not to waste food. To be very aware of what you're buying. And personally, if something gets thrown out, the next time I make that dish, I make less of it. Or I freeze some. You know, I cook and then maybe half of it I freeze. Is to be more aware of the kind of things that are being thrown out, to be very conscious of what's going into your garbage or into your composting. And it could make a very big difference. And the other thing is, along with the straws and things, is to use reusable or compostable containers and shopping bags. This is another way to keep the, you know, less garbage out there and less things going into the landfill. And it's another way that when you go to the supermarket, you can, you know, contribute to a more sustainable food system. So that is everything I think I can say.
Great. So, and just if anyone is interested in the composting thing, we did have a discussion here on composting, and he kind of gave a bunch of different ways that you can. It was a master gardener from Rutgers who came in and talked about it, and that is available on our YouTube page. But for now, I just wanted to open it up for questions. So anyone can ask any question of anything.
How do you control pests?
Pest management?
On your vegetables?
Yeah, so that goes into like pretty in-depth, you know, philosophy of if you're taking care of your soil is going to be able to, you know, hold those nutrients, etc. Network through other fungal networks, other plants, you know, you get where that's going, but ideally the pest management starts with the plant health up front. So the moment you're planting your seed, the genetic potential is there to have a healthy immunity and to keep boosting that immunity. So we use very, very simple fertilizers at the early stages, at certain points of the plant's life, to build the immunity early on, so it will have that vitality and secondary lipids in the cell walls that are going to be able to protect themselves from invasive pests. Ideally, we don't really, other than hand picking pests, we haven't really had too many issues with pests, other than basic aphids in the greenhouse, which are pretty uncontrollable at some points. But it seems to start early on in the early stages of the plant's life. That's where the immunity is built, just like a young child. If the nutrients are there in the early stages of life, the developmental stages will continue to have that immunity. So
add on to that.
Yeah.
So pests are like nature's cleanup crew. So they take the unhealthy stuff, clean it up, destroy it, and then that makes room for a healthy crop to thrive. So that's kind of what they do. So if we have pests or disease on our farms, we have to seriously look at what we're doing, because now we know we're not growing a nutritious or healthy crop. The pests that you want to have eating your crops are deer and groundhog, the larger animals, because they're the ones, they're like us, they're going for they're looking around trying to source out the most nutritious food. So like Rob said, it really starts with seed. So our pest management would be to save seed. It would be to take care of the plants, inoculate the seed. So if you have a vegetable garden, you can buy rhizobacterial inoculation for your seed, which is basically the same as a child getting colostrum from the mother's breast. That's like one of the most important things that we do. Actually, it's just a little powder, and we sprinkle it on, shake the packet up, and it has the components, the bacterial components for that baby plant when it starts to send out its roots to take up what it needs to grow into a healthy plant. And that's it's pretty much, the baby plants is just like baby humans. That's really why you want to take care of. You don't throw them out there in the cold if it's too cold. Like they say, don't throw your kid outside without a jacket on in the winter. It's kind of similar. So the soil temperatures, you want to make sure you're right if you're transplanting. And then as the plant goes, each vegetable is different for what it needs nutritionally. So we look at things like calcium and magnesium. These are also contributors for fruiting crops, and that what we're really doing is trying to maximize the genetic potential of each seed. And instead of looking at it as oh no, we're going to get pests, how do we get them off? Once the pests are on there, it's probably the pests came. What happened was probably weeks ago, so it's already too late.
Nature's scorecard, they call it.
That's kind of the idea, the model that we're learning from some of these ecological growers, these biological diverse growers. We had pests. We put out our cabbage crop in the summer, the late summer for the fall. Got destroyed by the cabbage looper beetles, and I'm pretty sure it was just a matter of just being too hot. It was too, the plant stresses. So we kind of look at a plant's health and immunity just like we look at our own. Not everyone that goes on the subway is going to catch a cold from somebody that is, has a cold. But what's the difference is their people's immunity system. So we want to build up the plant's immunities in any way you can do that through foliar spraying, nutrients regularly until you build your soil up. So you want to be able to feed your soil enzymes, biology, some sort of bacteria, fungal bacteria, and the nutrients that it needs, so they can come in mixtures of compost tea or just regular compost that you throw on before you're planting.
I'd like to add very quick small one too. When the healthy plant is growing and they're storing, they're able to get the carbohydrates, everything, they start producing root exudates that start stimulating the soil below. So it does start with healthy plants and of course continuing to build a healthy soil. And insects seem to be, they have an infrared radar sort of, they can pick up on what's weak. So an insect to a healthy plant, they might not even be able to read the frequency of the plant. That's what most of the scientists are finding within the community that we're talking with. And the insects seem to have that radar, and they just fly over a healthy plant, but they'll attack, it'll look red on the radar, if it's an unhealthy plant. And they're actually finding studies that beetles or insects who attack crops that are healthier, that once previously unhealthy, were boosted with whatever, can't even digest the carbohydrates of the plants. They're explode, like the beetles, this Colorado potato beetles, they're finding studies that an unhealthy plant crop next to a good one, the beetles can't even digest the healthy plant and they just explode. Like they literally just can't digest the plant matter and they just pop. And that pest management, that's pretty cool.
So, and it goes as you build your soil. Like we do have pests sometimes, but like the goal is each year to get better and better. And saving your seed has genetic potential, so to remember the soil that it's grown in. So I think seed is like one of the most prized possessions that we kind of just like. Oh, I'm gonna buy like 1,000 seeds for $2 and great, it's organic, cool, even better, it's not GMO. But like if you could start to save your seed, that's like really important because the seed remembers where it was grown as like second, third, fourth generation seed. I've had experiments up in Massachusetts where we just plant the seed from the spring into the fall next to stuff that we just bought from like Johnny's or High Mowing, and it grew 2 to 3 times faster, and it also like had less my pests are not good. I try not to like focus in on pests. I try to keep my focus on. But if they come up, you're gonna want to research and look into why they're there. What could cause them to come, and then start there. So, and let us know if we geek out too much and spend too much time on it. I know you plans on this too. Any other questions?
Well, I've been wondering, what do we as individuals do? And of course, there are the 7 things that you mentioned, and of course, we can eat at our local good food restaurants. And one thing that Judy mentioned was about the difference, say, between Food Town and other supermarkets. And I thought it'd be great to have a list, like we could write letters, said, for example, to the CEO of ShopRite or whoever. And just sitting here, at least I have no idea what these different supermarkets, like where they buy their food, what is the different qualities of their food, what is...
Well, that was one of the things that I think I glossed over. I was trying to, because I really felt I was duplicating everything, is to actually approach supermarkets, go up to the manager's desk and say, look, how much Jersey Fresh do you have? Because in Food Town, you definitely see it. And the more local, if you can't buy organic, at least to buy local and support local farms that probably farm more sustainably. So, I mean, you want somebody to put...
Well, I was thinking, besides just us folks in this room, like we need to get like sort of a group together, let's say from Monmouth County, right, who are interested in these kinds of things. Maybe it would be the BFA group, I don't know. But, that people who are interested in this, they could write letters to our Monmouth County freeholders, to the supermarkets, blah, 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 right? So there are a lot of, right now we're kind of sitting here without a lot of actions that we can take. So I'm just brainstorming right now.
Right, also, and you support your farmers markets, wherever they are, and that's very, very important because those are local farmers, and talk to them about their practices. And I really don't know enough about that. I don't know if you guys know enough about how produce managers source their stuff at these supermarkets.
A lot of times it's just like even with the Whole Foods. I know before they switched over from Amazon, they did a lot better job of it. Now it's a little different. But when I was opening the restaurant, I would go in there and just talk to, speaking up really, and just talking to somebody. If they care about it, they'll tell you about it. And as for, I can speak for the restaurants. Talk to the owners. Owners hate hearing the same thing over and over again. Yeah. And I've changed things in my place that, like, we didn't have dairy for the longest time. I only have dairy for coffee, because I heard the question, why don't you have dairy for coffee, 1,000 times. If you do that same thing with, even if something organic or local, have them list the farm on the menu, have them put it on their website. It's a lot more common now than it used to be. But I just feel like it's one of those things, the more you talk about it, the more it's going to actually get done and actually going to be taken on.
And speak to the produce manager, go into ShopRite or whatever. ShopRite, actually, I did not know, it's really, those are all small family-owned stores, not small, they're all family-owned stores under an umbrella of a big, they have somebody from each group of family stores that manages it. So they have a very community focus. And that's the whole community food system issue that you want to support. So if you went to ShopRite, or if you went to Acme, or, they're all trying to get more organic produce. They're all trying to they all have a nutrition, a health center, or an organic food center or whatever. I'm sure if you went to each place and kept bombarding the produce manager with how can we get more New Jersey fresh? Can we get more organic? Can we get, because I don't know how ShopRite sources its produce. I believe that Foodtown does source locally.
There's also a lot of delivery services that I actually been using Fresh Direct lately. They don't have a ton of organic stuff, but it's becoming a little easier to get it delivered to your door. And I know what's one, ugly vegetables.
Oh, yes.
The Misfit, yeah. They're organic, but it doesn't look good, so they won't put it on the shelves. So they will send stuff to your house that is organic, but it's just not pretty enough to be on the shelf.
That's another thing, by the way. We get too caught up in this perfect vegetable or this perfect fruit, and a lot of times with organics or with some of the produce doesn't look great. Doesn't mean it's not healthy. Doesn't mean it doesn't have nutrients. Doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't eat. We have to get, like everything else in this world we live in, everything has to be perfect and look a certain way. So yeah, don't ignore the fruit that doesn't look perfect, because it's still edible and it's still fine. So
I'll actually throw another thing on top of this. So I did work at a produce market for a few years, and one thing is that the smaller markets actually are going to be way more responsive to what you say, because they do really rely on repeat customers, and they are much more like so ShopRite, they're also managing this entire massive grocery store. I don't know what small markets there are around here. I'm still relatively new to the area. But smaller markets are good, and also really the CSAs and just doing local farms are really a great idea. And another really nice thing about that is you don't pick what's in the box. And so we got it, we got ours actually today. We do one in New Jersey, and we pick it up at Dean's Market once a week, and we just return the box every time, and it was all fresh greens. So now we're kind of trying to figure out what salads we're having this week. Earlier in the summer, they'll have a few when they give us string beans. They'll have a lot where they give us tomatoes. The tomato season is my favorite. But sometimes they give us something and we have no idea what it is, and we're Googling to find out what is our local food, what it is, and we're trying to look up recipes and trying to be creative with how we cook. And so it's cool because it gets us a little bit more in touch with
and you eat stuff that you might not have eaten.
Yeah, we eat stuff we wouldn't have eaten. We try new recipes we wouldn't have tried. We do a lot of roasted vegetables, and which is great. But it also, you are also voting with your dollars. And actually, for us, what we kind of figured it out. We're spending less on produce because we do this than we were before. We think because we're wasting a lot less, and we're also kind of taking whatever comes and preparing stuff with that. So
I want to also make, this is a pitch. It doesn't really matter, but there's a food co-op. It's not really a food co-op. It's something called Purple Dragon. Do you guys know about Purple Dragon? All right. So Purple Dragon is they call themselves a food co-op, but what happens is you join and you get a share, and the person who is at the head of it, who's up in she's up north somewhere, she will source everything, but she has agreements with local farmers, she has agreements with, sometimes it does come from California, but it always comes from pretty much from the United States, but not always. But it's all organic, and it's less expensive, and you buy a share of that, and every 2 weeks you get such diversity, because it's a little bit different than a CSA, because you're not limited to one farm, though she does source locally as much as possible. So that's something to consider also, rather than just a CSA. And I think, it is every 2 weeks, $50, $60 every 2 weeks. So it's a little bit less than a CSA if you're not willing to put the money out and take a little bit of a risk every year with the CSA. So but she does work mostly with local farmers.
I'd like to add 2 points to that as well. CSAs are great for the growers. It's some money up front. You all probably are familiar with the model, but that really helps the growers up front to have that promised income in the beginning of the year. it'll sustain them economically throughout. So talk about sustainability, that's a really good model to pursue. And if, you know, we're starting ours up, I mean, but just talk to growers and find CSAs, they're like one of the best things to stick to. And a second point, I think, Tim, when you're talking about how could that be active, RJ and I, the BFA, the organization, they're funding a meter, which was to talk about the nutrient density, and a lot of this has to fall on the consumer and become consumer driven. So you say, how do we go out and change it? Well, one or two individuals going to a supermarket might be kind of just, you know, it's not going to change much, but if you have hundreds of people realizing, okay, this food is not that good, this food is good, that consumer driven market is going to make change. And I think that at least why RJ and I got the BFA is that they're working on a prototype of a nutrient meter that can read, you know, the nutritional levels of produce in real time at the market just with a little, you know, infrared scanner. So, you know, that was a huge catch for RJ and I when we first heard about it. We have the farming prototype model. Like I said, we're collecting the data. We're trying to send it into the organization. It's a nonprofit group, open source group. And they're trying to build the data from all the growers of different vegetables, different, you know, varieties of each vegetable, you know, different species, whatever. Pretty much, it's a massive data gathering, and that is going to in turn give the ability to, you know, through algorithms, give a consumer-based model for us to use. And, you know, like we said, when you go into a market, if you have a device or you have something that you could check, is this potato better than that potato? You're not going to look at the practices of, you know, is it certified organic or is it local as much. You'll look at what's the best for my family and the best for me to eat. And then the secondary question becomes, okay, well, they use pesticides, so am I going to take the more nutrient dense one that has a little bit of pesticides, or the non, you know, totally void nutrient ones with maybe a little bit of it? You don't know, and all of a sudden that consumer driven market is what's going to drive. So you were saying, you know, the consumer has to be behind it, and it has to become a full movement of everyone involved. The awareness isn't really there. I think like we can all recognize that right now, just in general conversations with people. You don't have those conversations. You know, it's obviously become a lot more over the years. You know, I hear the word organic almost daily. You know, not because I'm farming, but just because people say it now. But, you know, 10 years ago, I didn't really hear that word ever. There was only one shop in the town that I grew up on that had organic food. Now there are, you know, restaurants, there's markets that are coming up. So to continually cultivate the awareness, I think that's a good focus, at least, you know.
I was going to say that's, you know, this whole GMO issue has really blown up, and the reason it blew up is because consumers said, no, we don't like this, we don't trust it. And now it's a problem, and for a lot of companies that were putting a lot of money into that, they were getting to realize they can't sell it because people don't want to buy it, especially when it comes to milk and stuff.
Like when it hits your family, it hits your family.
Yeah.
Like you can't deny, you know, when you have people in your family coming down with like terminal illnesses, autism. We work with an autistic population. It's real. Like these people, they'll do anything for their family when there's that motivation there to be healthy. And those are the best people for us on our end, that they're just all in. They say, I don't care what it costs, I don't care if I have to drive, you know, an hour to get it, they'll come for good quality food. And that makes it really real, and it helps us too as growers to understand that people are appreciating it. And appreciation is a pretty big part of it as well.
I do want to, since I have worked with at-risk and limited resource audiences, I mean, that organic is always my preference personally also, though I can't always afford it. But it's the whole idea of the local and the smaller farmers, because the smaller farmers, even if they're not, you're not even you're not certified yet at this point, they're going to probably have healthier practices. I would think they're going to have a more biodiverse approach to farming because they're smaller. They don't have the big industrial farms. They don't have quite the yields or whatever. I don't know because I'm not a farmer.
Our economic resilience comes from diversity too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, one crop fails, we have five others that are.
And that's a very big issue with our commodity system, is because they grow these fields of monoculture that one fungus or one pesticide is going to wipe out the whole thing, and then, you know, where's the food system and everything. So, I mean, if you can't do organic, at least do local, support your local farmers, and go to the supermarkets and say that you want to see more produce from local farmers. Just everybody needs to go out and do that, so you can start the vanguard.
I have one more quick comment, sorry. To your point, Tim, when Matt first emailed me about doing this, the first thought I had was like, wow, I should create a list of products that are like sustainable or not sustainable. I didn't do that, but I did quickly research this Jeffrey Smith. He's a non-GMO. He's like a proponent, like a major proponent, speaker of non-GMO. So you can look Jeffrey Smith up, and he has a non-GMO and I printed out 5 of these because they're a lot of ink and whatever, but they're up here. But it's all online, and through his organization, I believe it was responsibletechnology.org, and the non-GMO shopping guide. They have like all the information you can know about every brand. What foods to avoid that are heavily glyphosate heavy, are all GMO. What really you should buy organic. What you could get away with. Sometimes people say, well, avocados and things are not. You don't have it taken in them as much of the harmful stuff as like strawberries or blueberries. So you can kind of like mix and match. But I think that's a great idea, putting a list together so like people can say, oh well, that's like a company I want to support. And so you kind of see that, but there's so many companies. Really, I think most of them are all derived from a few. From my research.
Judy
also
broke my heart when we were putting this together because I've been trying to cut out meat and I've been trying to replace it with protein, and she told me that almonds, I guess, are really...
Yeah, but yes. Almonds are very water intensive, and that was a very big issue when California was going through the drought. But you have to look at it compared to how labor intensive and how resource intensive the production of protein is, meat and animal protein, and that's really, and then, all right, so you don't eat as many almonds. I mean, but yeah, I was bringing that up because I just was throwing that out there to be a little bit of a devil's advocate. But the resource intensiveness of growing almonds is nothing compared to the resource intensiveness of growing CAFO finished cattle, period. Nor does it release the kind of CO2. I was also going to make a pitch for the Environmental Working Group, which has the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list. So I use that a lot. And that's the one that says that avocados don't have as much, very minimal pesticides, so that if you can't afford all organic, I buy organic, the things that are on the Dirty Dozen, which are the highest level of organic, of pesticides. And they also are good for some of that other information that we get. I think they do GMOs, and it's a really great organization. They do things with skin products and suntan lotion. And it's just, the Environmental Working Group is really a good resource for any of that stuff also.
Nancy, did you remember?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry I don't have much of a voice today, but we're living in a more diverse community, and as a result, people are eating foods from their home countries and such. And I was wondering, from a farmer's perspective, are you able to do anything to address those needs? Like, I know in our garden we have certain crops that, I'm from Jamaica, so we have certain crops that we can grow, such as callaloo and, well, we're trying black beans this year. We're still waiting for them to turn black. But when you go into the bodegas, which have a lot of those products, you do see that, and I'm wondering if we, in the Northeast, would be able to get that locally from a farm, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we love to hear feedback from the people that are buying from us. So if there's a diverse market, and like, in Edison, there's a huge Indian population.
Right.
And happens to be that Rob and I love Indian food too. But like, we grow okra, we grow certain types of chili peppers for them.
Right.
And because we like eating it. So if there's a large enough population for us to grow a crop, then yeah. And then also when we do our CSA, we like to hear those diverse things that people don't have, to just get people to try new things. To try, like we did okra. A lot of people don't really know what okra is. It's, yeah. I at least in our CSA, we have 16 families. So I think like we want to be able to grow. What?
We were just talking about it. We're just talking about okra.
You all know okra? That's great. Yeah.
This crowd.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, as a dietitian, I'm supposed to do that. Not my favorite vegetable.
Yeah, but there's a
I
way
guess-
to cook it.
I know, and that's the
You gotta
issue,
put it in like
and
a
then I know
gumbo
it
or
is.
something.
No, actually, I have tasted, I have friends who use it in their cultural cooking, and really, depending on how it's cooked,
And it's how you wash it and dry it.
dry it
before
and how
cut
you get
it.
the slime out of it, but that's the
Yeah,
thing.
this is slimy. Dry it before cutting.
Okay. I'm not cooking it, but I'll eat it, I will eat it if somebody else cooks it.
Right.
But also, I'm sure there's some cultural produce that might not be able to be grown here.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Just-
Well,
yeah.
we like to challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, so
too.
which is fine.
You know, but that's, yeah, the
Changing
climate,
hands.
the climate is, you know, what we can grow, we can't grow as much here in New Jersey as we can in a tropical
Yeah.
environment, you know.
We were
without
talking that they're gonna be
heat, plastic.
growing hazelnuts, they're gonna try and grow hazelnuts in New Jersey, which they had not been able to grow because of a blight. But they also were looking at walnuts and almonds, but because of the temperature and the climatic conditions, they can't grow that in New Jersey, but they might be able to. So that, you know, so they're gonna try the hazelnuts because they've gotten a blight-resistant version of the tree now. But so sometimes that's an issue also. But that was part, as a dietitian, working with multicultural populations, that can be challenging.
But I also find that a lot of Americans, and I'm sorry for generalizing, are not very
Adventurous.
Yeah, adventurous.
No, absolutely.
So there's like white daikon, like this
Mhm.
white
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
A
daikon.
lot of people, you know, like I would go to the checkout and they'd say, "What's this?" This is at the grocery store.
And it's healthy.
Okay,
It's
they don't know
very
what
good.
they're selling.
Daikon
Yeah.
is- yeah.
And these are extremely nutritious vegetables.
Very nutritious daikon.
So people tend to eat
You're right.
beans and peas and carrots, but nothing beyond that.
But that was something that as a dietitian, when I was working, because I'm retired now, that, yeah, because we work with multicultural audiences, we would try and cross over. And yeah, but that's something that in general, I think, and as a restaurateur, I mean, that's, you know, something.
There's a lot of stuff that I get questions a lot that sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't believe that it's a question that's being asked. But a lot of things, even like our kale salad, just preparations of things. People ask me what's the crunchy thing in our kale salad. It's the kale. It's like, it's the stem. Like a lot of restaurants don't use a stem, and the way things are prepared comes back to that waste issue is that we use everything where the fiber is actually in the stem. So we put it in our salads, and people, like I've had at least 10 people ask me what the crunchy thing in the salad is, and it always cracks me up, and I try not to make them feel like whatever, but I'm like, it's just a way of preparing it, and I feel like we're not using the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest setback with a lot of restaurants. And like white daikon, awesome. You can do so many good things with it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like the things, like everything you said so far, I'd say pickle it. I think pickling something, I think, is the way to introduce it to people in like the best form, and then you can there's different other ways.
Pickled okra is pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I said. Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah.
Pickled anything is good.
Daikon, everything, radish. Yeah.
Going back to the question about the diversity and goal, that's another. It becomes consumer driven too. It's if people want it, and there's a population or there's a desire for it from a big enough group of people, it'll happen. And I think it's funny because when we do grow odd things like Asian cabbages, whatever, you do get odd feedback, and some people love it and some people just hate it. And if it's something that we're fighting where, yeah, maybe people just like beans and potatoes, but you could grow 100 different varieties of beans and potatoes. And to give something new and interesting, at least to get them excited or reinvigorated, other than just the basics, like, everyone has their simple.
I know what she used to do in the Purple Dragon, which, I mean, perfect for CSA also, is that if it was something really odd that they thought people wouldn't know what it was, they would come up with a recipe for it.
Yeah.
And hand that out with the produce, just so that people, and I ended up, I stopped doing it for a whole lot of reasons, but I ended up eating things that I never thought I would eat, or that I didn't even know what they were, and here I am a dietitian, so this kind of thing, getting from the local farmers, especially ones that, grow diverse products, is really, it's healthy also, because that's another thing that doesn't happen, is that we eat the same foods all the time, and we're not getting all of the nutrients that we should be getting, because we're not eating a diverse enough diet. So if you can...
It becomes a shock to the system too. For an individual who's eating, a typical American diet, it's going to be a shock to introduce like fermented foods, sauerkraut, whatever it may be. And there is a period of adjusting. So it's a slow, especially from the dietary,
Well, from the gut also.
Yeah, from the gut.
Probiotics and
We're
everything.
pretty much fighting stomachs.
Yeah, but that's okay.
No, I'm joking. But
It's really good, and that's another thing. We don't eat a lot of fermented foods in this country, but it's lacking, and it's one of the reasons that people have gut issues. They don't have probiotics in their food. It's not just yogurt. You know, it's you can get probiotics from fermented foods and from other foods and things like that. So yeah, it's really important to have a diverse food sources.
I was just going to add 2 cents to what you just said about the yogurt, because my wife's more of a tree hugger than me. Just not even realizing what you get when you buy store-bought yogurt versus making your own. And so we bought one of those steam pots or whatever.
It's not that difficult if you get started.
And then we went on vacation and like, oh, there was yogurt at the breakfast buffet. It was like the probiotic yogurt. And I looked at the package, which was only like, 6 ounces.
All yogurt has.
And it had like, half my daily intake of like sugar and everything else. So, once you get to making your own foods and knowing what's in them, it does make a lot of difference.
And we'll be doing a label reading class at some point in the spring, because I really think that you brought up a very important point. People don't stop to look at what they're actually eating when they're buying a processed.
I've told her no more sauerkraut though.
Okay, well, it smells. What are you gonna do? It smells. I know. In fact, I had some fermented vegetable with I mixed it into my coleslaw and I opened it, took a bite, closed it, because it smells. But people don't look at what they're eating. They don't look at the labels and they don't realize how much sugar, how little fiber. They don't know, they don't look at the ingredients and understand how much of what they're eating is just manufactured food. And this is a little bit of an aside, but I have this theory that one of the reasons we have such digestive issues in this country is because we're eating all this processed food that our bodies don't know it's not real food. It's not what our bodies are used to processing. It's not whole food that these guys grow. And you have all these weird modified food starch and this other stuff in it. Our bodies don't know how to process all that. And I think that the issues with the morbidities and all the diseases that are out there have a lot to do with that. So great that you make your own yogurt.
Yeah, it definitely starts from an education standpoint, like young. If I knew this stuff, I grew up in an Italian household. If I knew this stuff when I was younger, it would definitely change my outlook on food and would make it a lot easier for me to shift my perspective on everything. But growing up that way, it was just like, this is what we ate, this is what we did from a cultural standpoint. But yeah, education is so important, and just because you have to eat for health, and people don't understand that. People are just eating, like the processed stuff is it's the craziest thing to see what's in food, and usually you're making it at home. Is a couple ingredients probably, and that's it. And it's milk. There you go. So that's it.
And a starter.
Yeah, the stuff that people put in food. That's why we don't use any fillers at the restaurant. When we do gluten-free, that was the hardest thing for us. Was that we do gluten-free bread, and everyone says you need like xanthan gum and stuff like that. That's just sitting in your gut, and it just stays with you. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. That's why it was the hardest thing for us to take that stuff out, because we never used it in the first place. And that's really just putting vegetables where moisture should be. Like we shave zucchini into our bread, like little things. And when you're younger, it's easier to trick kids to eat things if they can't see it. And that was a really big standpoint for us with the kids who come to the restaurant and we educate. There's so much fiber and stuff that we do. They don't understand what they're eating, but they feel a lot better. They're not hunched over when they leave, and they're not just like holding their stomachs. But it's just so important to educate the youth, especially because they're the most important. I feel like they're the most important thing on this earth coming up, especially with the farming. I feel like that's going to keep that alive.
It's I married an Italian woman, and I'm not Italian, and the first weekend we moved in together, she saw that I had a jar of Prego tomato sauce.
I would have cried.
She just said, you will never buy this again.
I found it.
But because she does like the homemade tomato sauce and that kind of.
Which is not that big a deal.
It's not much longer than just dumping something in there. It's really quick. But since then, like we started like doing like homemade hummus because hummus is like $7 for like a thing of it, and we've started doing that and it's delicious. You don't dump in a bunch of extra salt, and
you get a sense of accomplishment. My mother ate a certain way her whole life, and she just thank God she just started. Even when she comes to the restaurant, there's certain things she'll eat, and even though it's her son, she still won't eat a lot of things there. But she made her own hummus exactly. She made her own hummus. Like, she was so proud. She called me and say I made hummus. I was like, all right, good. She loved it, and I was like, it's delicious. Yeah, I've been trying to tell you this for 40 years. Because I try to always push on everyone the 80-20 for me. Like 80% of the time, eat very healthy and really be conscious about it. 20%, there's going to be processed stuff you're going to eat. There's going to be, I'm a Scotch guy, I like to drink Scotch. There's certain things. So It's just that 20%, go a little nuts, have fun.
But even scotch is not that overly processed.
Oh yeah, well, like good scotch.
Good scotch, right,
So,
right.
good scotch, good tequila is good. So, but that 80% is just really just be conscious, and that 20% have fun, go nuts.
And what's with the vodka not being made from potatoes anymore?
I know.
They're all grains now, and I can't eat grains, so yeah. But anyway, that's a total, that's a total non sequitur.
We'll do sustainable drinking classes.
Yeah.
This might be more of a personal question, but I've been reading a lot about regenerative agriculture, and I'm really interested in volunteering. So, if you need anybody.
Okay. Yeah.
You can get our information at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, we put a sign-up sheet for our Bionutrient Food Association. Right now, we work at a school for young adults with autism, which is a farm. They do animal husbandry there, and we have 16 family CSA that we're kind of like the farm vocational leaders. And then we're just starting our farm down, Farmingdale. So we're in the baby stages, and as we grow, we will definitely welcome at least volunteer days. So just leave your contact and your email, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay, cool.
So, thank you again for your interest.
It's very interesting.
And do we have any more questions? Or?
I have a question. I know Fulfill is a big food bank, but are there any other local food banks that might be in need of like fresh produce that we could like donate? Because I bring some to Fulfill, but I don't know if there's probably more
Well,
that aren't
you
receiving
could
the
contact
volume.
Lunch Break, but they get most of their stuff from Fulfill, but what else is there? Other
I know, I mean, more local, there's like food.
Okay.
We use Jenna?
Yeah, Food Not
I was gonna say,
yeah.
Every
Jenna,
Sunday
it's
in
good
Hampton
contact
Park.
with
Right
people.
now it's from 5 to 6, but at the weekend after Thanksgiving it's from 3 to 4.
Thank you.
Yeah, give you some information.
Yeah, sure.
And what they really, I think what they mostly probably need is fresh produce.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, even Fulfill, I don't know, I know when I used to volunteer there a few years ago, they were beginning to get cold, refrigerators or that they could store the stuff in, so I don't really know where they are with that now. That's a big problem with food banks.
They do accept fresh now. I brought
Okay.
some there the other day, so.
Yeah, because that was a big concern with people getting things from food banks, and everybody was so upset because they're not eating healthy. But if you have ever worked in a food bank, I don't know what it's like now, but 2-3 years ago, what you had is mostly canned, high sodium, high sugar stuff, and it's not. What are you going to do if your family's hungry? And this is where the Trader Joe's guy came in, and I thought he was going to try and expand that operation to gleaning all, up and down the Eastern Seaboard, starting operations like that, where he would glean and take things and turn them into usable food, or turn them into, find a way to sell them and then turn them into cooked food. But I guess that never happened. So that's, there's a lot of waste out there.
There was these farmers, I forget where they're out, somewhere on the West Coast, they actually put aside extra produce that they allowed people that were coming to the farmers market to buy, to donate produce to a food bank. So people would, everyone some people have extra and they want to give back, and they, through that market, I thought that was a really cool idea.
I think that it's catching on more, and I think that, see, that's the whole community food system issue with this. We have to support each other as a community and help people that might not have the money to buy organic or to buy fresh produce. We always used to say, yeah, frozen actually is not so bad because that's usually picked right and flash frozen and sent to market, but canned stuff, as a community, we're all responsible for each other. So it's good that you want to make those kind of donations, and I think it's great that, farmers were doing that. I wish that would happen more in New Jersey, but, I know it's catching on. People are beginning to realize we have to help each other. If we want a healthy, sustainable food system, we have to work together to get it there.
That's a good moment. If anyone wants, we've got flyers and everything. We've got sign-up sheets. We also have the Sustainable Red Bank sign-up sheet. We do this once a month. Next month is the cook-off, but we'll be resuming our different lectures in December and moving forward. But thank you so much to our panelists. That was fantastic.
This is during the day. It's true. I think it's 11 to 12 on Mondays. They're starting a cookbook.
Oh yeah.
So if anybody is interested or available, you